Now let's briefly talk about the geopolitics. Uh, and the way to do is to start with something like mid 18th century, when the colonial powers started acquiring territories, and UK had invaded every country in the world except 28 at that time, rather 20 at that time. They were lesser. Currently, there are 193 members of the United Nations. Till about mid of 20th century, the colonial powers were up, and it was basically Europe and USA and Japan as imperialist power. And the First and the Second World War reduced the strength of economic strength, military size, and they lost a lot of manpower. Um, and The US became the hegemon. US was far ahead of the others, and from then onwards, 1945 or 48, or let's say 1950 onwards, US started becoming the dominant power. It became the dominant economic power. It also became the dominant military power. The UK started going down. The European countries were going down. Uh, Russia, on the other hand, developed USSR and had a dominant military power comparable to the US, but not economic power. China was just emerging, and China concentrated on its experiments with communist regimes, and by year 2000 had established its institutions and then started growing. Meanwhile, Latin America, Africa, uh, India, many other countries in Asia were growing only slowly, if at all, and the extent of poverty was large. From 2000, broadly speaking, this scenario starts changing. By year 2020, when COVID has come, many of the Asian economies, they formed a bloc also called ASEAN. Uh, Much before that, um, Japan, Korea had actually emerged into developed economies with the help of the technologies, etc., etc. Germany and Japan, through the agreements, were not allowed to develop their militaries for any external use. Hence, they were spending lesser money on the armaments and in the militaries and could use it for development. So, China, sorry, Japan emerged as the leading economic power in Asia, and Germany emerged as the leading economic power in India. So it is important. The amount of money which gets wasted on the military supplies, equipment, manpower, etc., does make a difference in terms of economic growth of a country. India's economic growth got affected in 1962 when there was a border conflict. It got affected in 67 when there was a border conflict with Pakistan, and further down. Today, India has become the largest buyer of military equipment in the world, which means that much money goes into something which is non-productive. Now, the other point which happens is that the developed countries invariably, in their growth process, then have less and less persons employed in agriculture. Many times they are relying on their former colonies. For example, UK relies on Australia and New Zealand and Canada for their food supplies. Uh, France relies similarly on its former colonies, etc. And then the manufacturing sector is there, then the services sector is there. Normally, again, we call some country developed country when their services become more than 50%, which in our case is also happening, in Indian case is also happening. But our manufacturing has not grown and then declined. Manufacturing in China has grown while the employment in agriculture has gone down. Hence, their manufacturing output is the largest in the world. To the extent that the Europeans or the Americans or the Indians, many other countries can't even compete because of the volumes which they produce. Whether it is telecom equipment or it's clothes or it is cars now and so on. So now that is the difference between the economies of, let's say, USA, which is highly indebted, very high expenditure on military, 800 bases. This year they have proposed $858 billion, not million, for their military forces. That is equivalent to the GDPs of more than 100 countries in the world. It's the surplus which is earned by countries like Japan, Korea, China, basically therefore Asia, which gets funneled into the financial system of the USA for them to then use it as loans elsewhere and all that and make their money. So therefore financial sector is very large and very profitable. They have also kept their interest rates low. Now coming to the recent phenomena, last 1 year USA from almost 0.5% or so Fed rate has gone beyond 5%. That has made the capital expensive in the US context. Something similar has happened, not to that extent, in Europe. Who does it hurt most? It hurts the small and medium enterprises. Secondly, inflation in USA is also touching 8%. In India it is 6.6%, which is high because 6% is our target. Inflation in Europe is high, it is 6%, more than practically ever before after the Second World War. In Turkey, the inflation has touched 100%. In Pakistan, the inflation has touched 100%. Sri Lanka is 80%. All these countries have had very high level of inflation, and without going through the intermediate stages of the argument, it hurts the small and medium enterprises and it hurts the poor class and the lower middle class, whose wages don't go in that proportion. So I'm not going into detail, but left and right, both sides, the employees, the working class have started protesting in USA and Europe. This is where now comes the year of 2022, the year of Ukraine. Briefly, therefore, we have to trace the history because the general media, Western media, does not report it from a global point of view, but basically from a European point of view or NATO point of view or American point of view. And that point of view is that there are the good guys and there are bad guys. The good guys are the Europeans and Ukraine, and the bad guy is Russia. And China, which is also likely to support them and has been supporting them, is also a bad guy. This is broadly in the context that in 1971, when President Nixon and Kissinger went over to China to shake hands with them, make them member of WTO, invited them to come and participate in the trade of the world and the USA, etc., etc. To a stage has come that China has become a butt of criticism in USA and therefore other places that media carries that image, as if China has done something wrong by having these very high balance of trade. Trade balance is in favor of China. More than $1 trillion in USA, more than $1 trillion in Europe, and most other countries. Is it their fault? They are making shoes, they are making chappals, they are making toys, they are making this and this and this and this. You are buying it and we are paying for it. They have not come and stolen any money from you, right? And you allowed them. You allowed them under WTO rule. And then when in technology they have started coming closer to you or started expanding, like UI, communication equipment, you put a ban on it. When their TikTok starts doing better than your social media, you ban it. You have a reason that it has military angle. Everything has a military angle. What will you discuss? It has a military angle. So, the China side of the story is not heard actually in the US media. And we in India follow the US media. So we also take it as a generally thing that therefore the China's economic strength is already more. And in most technologies, they are equal or ahead in some technology like semiconductor. Maybe they are not, but they are doing the secret work. A lot of research work is there, a lot of money is being put. But semiconductor and machines to make semiconductors have been banned or should not go to. Now we come to Russia. That the sanctions on China are not related to you have attacked us or you have attacked our friend or ally or something like that. No, it's just that it will be you can use it for military purposes. And we want to put it down. This is where a number of very shrewd observers like Keshav Mahbubani, who is in the National University of Singapore, says that China has actually won the economic war. But US is the hegemon and they do not want to adjust to the situation that China is their equal. No more a colony or something like that. Chinese, earlier Japanese were derided as guys who make cheap stuff and all that, Now whether it's military equipment or it is ABCD, they are ahead of you. And you made COVID medicine, good or bad. China also made it, India also made it. No big deal. So what you can do, they can do. China is very far ahead in the pharmaceuticals. I mean, they make the active ingredients, which we also use in India and elsewhere in the world. So their advantages and their strategy is that when they go for it, they go for a very large quantity. When we had a licensing system in India, which said that you can make 1,000 cars or you can make 5,000 refrigerators or you can make 10,000, they were talking about making this kind of stuff in 1 day or 1 hour. And hence, they are the ones who have in consumer electronics, automobiles, and even mechanical manufacturing, mastered the art of large-scale manufacturing. And after that, marketing it. Now, this is where the agreements come. Whether we call them free trade agreements, we call it following WTO rules, we have special agreements. So, China is part of ASEAN. ASEAN group is most of the Asian countries, and they have very little tariffs on the products which move from one place to the other. So it's a free movement. Since it's a free movement, the better product, less expensive product, higher quality product wins. And most of the time, the Japanese, the Chinese product wins. Europeans or Latin Americans cannot come and compete with Chinese consumer electronics. So, now coming back to the overall economy first, the trends are quite clear. It is an adjustment which G7 have to make. G7 is the USA and the Western European countries. And the European Union has 30 countries, but a lot of them, Eastern Europe, then Baltic states, Latvia, Estonia, Slovenia, etc. They are not that well off. Their economy was oriented toward the USSR, and their sources of technology got broken, and so they have come down few degrees. But the Western European countries, which were former colonial masters, Germany, France, Spain, Italy, are doing well. Now, they have not broken the relationship with China. One of the main reasons is that China floated the world's single largest infrastructure project called BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, to follow what historically 2000, 3000 years ago used to be the Silk Road. You know, certainly from Istanbul in Turkey, but also other parts of Europe, they are connected by ground, and all the way up to various parts of China, going through Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Mongolia, etc. And so similarly, the BRI initiative is there, and with so many ports and so many railway lines, so many roads are being made. It's more than $1 trillion already spent on it. There is some criticism also. But this particular BRI initiative will tie together this vast expense, including Eurasia, which is not bothered about otherwise. And for us, India, we have to look at it because we have, unfortunately, whether in education or in our dialogues or in our media, a Eurocentrism. Something appears from USA and Germany and France, all right. Even if it comes from Greece, we don't bother about it. And what about the rest of the countries? Something Brazil, Cuba, Cambodia, which is full of Hindu temples, Thailand, full of Hindu temples. Where do we see the news? Where do we know their geography? Where do we know their socio-economic thing? So, a big hole in our thinking here is concentrating on 5-6 countries which are well off, but then everybody else is trying to market to them also. Our ITS service, people sitting here doing work for them, being considered export, makes it that our exports are quite high. Otherwise, our balance of trade will be even much bigger. So we have to see what is that approximate amount, $300 billion or something like that. $300 billion is the trade between Germany and China alone. It's not less. So that's our total trade, $300 billion. And now, which are the large quantities? We have put an infographic there. All the commodities are mentioned in the form of balls that can be referred to. We can link it up also and request to do an exercise. Which are the top 5, which are the bottom 5? Our engineering goods are doing well. Our ITS is doing well in terms of earning money. Yes. Of course, those main beneficiaries are sitting outside because they are getting something which is at 1/4 the cost or 1/8 the cost. Otherwise, they would be going to Vietnam or Sri Lanka or Nepal or something. However, what we call that we are in the software industry, our own softwares which we have made, which are branded, are very few. Very, very few, and we could have made them. Okay, now let's proceed then. There are some other trends. One is that crypto thing had started. The market worth gone about $1 trillion of those companies. Then it is now open that what they really are. One of the banks doing cryptocurrency yesterday has failed in the USA called Silvertron. Before that, FTX scandal is there. Then we have the CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies. China and India are ahead in the world in doing that. 20 other countries, India might be helping to set up the central bank digital currencies. UPI is already the biggest, largest application in the world. So that will expand. In other words, on digitization, where actually India did its own work, not taken it from somebody, not asking some other company to come and do it. And the reason is that the USA and Europe is behind in this. They have not done that much of digitization of the financial system because they have the control over the earlier system. Now, how have these things come up? These things have come up because of the Ukraine conflict and the sanctions which have been put. Russia, what is the sanction put? $300 billion currency which was there of their persons and of the government, USA has seized. Personal property, violating one of the basic principles. उनका क्या मतलब है उससे? They were taken off the SWIFT network, so they could not do the financial transaction with the rest of the world. Anyway, USA and Russia has combined together to form a system of their own. And the reason I will be mentioning these things is that it is the actions of the hegemon, USA and the Europe, their tail, Western Europe, their tail, which is pushing the system to become multipolar from unipolar. NATO started. Maybe Russia will give them a taste of their pudding, even in the military side. But be that as it may, USSR, Russia, we don't call it USSR anymore, and China formed a friendship treaty just before 22nd February 2022, when the invasion took place. Now, what else? Their pipelines were blasted. It is by now very clear who have done it. Russia has not done it. That is very, very clear. And there was no motive. Who it has affected? They thought they will cripple Russian economy. That has not happened. Numbers are available, but yes, their economic growth went down last year. But they were able to sell oil and gas to other countries which are friendly to Russia, including India, China, and many small countries. So there has been no difference in terms of their selling of oil and gas. And they thought that Russia will get crushed because of that. Now this is the real feedback coming from the market then. Okay, you are not the hegemon. You just say, okay, don't buy from them. Why should I not buy from them? I'm getting cheaper. Why should I not buy? And the background of the conflict, I have gone into a separate tape as to what the background is of Crimea, of the Eastern Europe part, Eastern Ukraine part, where Russian background people were living and all that, and they were being prosecuted. And Crimea, there was a base of Russia for a long, long time. And the person who was democratically elected in Ukraine was kicked out through a coup, and then they were attacking Crimea. And since in Black Sea, that is the only base which Russia has got, they couldn't have afforded it, etc., etc. But for some other time. This is talking geopolitics. Now, what it affected? Ukraine was the wheat basket of not only Europe, but Africa. Very good wheat producers, large area. That got affected. There was some agreement. India benefited because of that. They got affected because they're not getting oil and gas. Therefore, their electricity is also not there. The pipelines are not going to be easily restarted, though Russia has said that they will repair them. But these are massive investments. And how can you go and blast, whether it is Norway or it is USA or it is even now they say some terrorists from Ukraine? Though it's not possible because, submarine you require, etc. But you can go and blast these things up. Now, that is the Dadagiri. That is what people have got tired of, the US Dadagiri. They talk about international order, rules of order under which people should work, and there should be liberal democracies. Fair enough, we like it very much. We are also Democrats. But who invaded Iraq? Who invaded Afghanistan? Who invaded Syria? Who invaded Sudan? And Vietnam? क्या कसूर किया ना वियतनाम में? गरीब लोग. Afghanistan गरीब लोग. Poorest countries in the world. क्या Iraq तो ठीक है. Iraq, Sudan, they wanted to capture the oil. So people have said, this is your history. This is what you've been doing, right? And now you come and become, holier than thou and say we will not let Russians live because, they have done this invasion and so on. Okay, so summarizing it, the inflation rate last year has been high. Europe also. The global north has not done well. People are criticizing the economic growth of India also, and we will attach some things one by Mr. Raghuraman, the former RBI governor, another by Malhotra. Um, However, it is reasonable. It may not be that high as we would have expected, but IMF has projected 7%. I think we will achieve it. Now, um, China will not have that much growth because of the COVID thing which came, and also there was a political uncertainty which last week has got over because Mr. Xi has got elected again as a president and the head of the PLA, that is the armed forces, and the earlier foreign minister, a very nice guy, has got elected as the prime minister. So India has become president of the G20. It is part of the BRICS. It is invited to the ASEAN. It is part of Quad. But it has not yet figured out where to position itself. It is president of G20, but its economy is not even the top 20 yet. Therefore, we have started congratulating ourselves a little too soon in terms of what we have become. Not so. We always have to keep in mind the per capita income, because then the marketing opportunities come according to that. In digitization, we have done well. We have bought the leftover phones of the rest of the world, second hand or third hand, or if nobody else will buy, maybe a very small fraction, 1% of the Apple i20s, and we have given a phone to everybody. Fantastic achievement. That has made the communication possible. They are connected to the world. They can also, anybody, a PhD or a non-graduate can equally access information if they want to. So this is where the broad state is. And in geopolitics, yes, the name of India is progressing, but yet the muscle is not there. Muscle comes from your economic and technological power. You have been doing research for so long in HAL, etc., and when it comes to a private airline, you end up buying $100 billion worth of planes, with which you could have set up 10 factories. I've done it. So, कहना और कथनी मतलब फर्क है ना, कथनी और करनी में.